The repair shop smelled of ozone and grease. A cramped corner establishment on Station Theta 9, where nobody asked questions and everyone paid in credits. Marcus wiped his hands on his already stained coveralls and squinted at the woman who had just walked through his door. She moved wrong. That was his first thought. Too fluid, too controlled, like every step had been calculated 3 moves ahead. Her left arm hung limp at her side, and beneath the hood of her dark cloak, he caught a glimpse of pale skin and eyes that seemed to catalog every tool on his workbench in a single sweep. "I need a repair," she said. Her voice carried an accent he couldn't place, something that suggested she'd learned standard from textbooks rather than conversation. Marcus gestured to the examination chair. "Let me see it." She hesitated, which surprised him. People who came to back alley repair shops on forgotten stations didn't hesitate. They were usually too desperate. But this woman looked at him with an intensity that made him wonder if she was calculating how quickly she could kill him with one arm. Finally, she sat and pulled back her cloak. Marcus had seen a lot of modifications in his 15 years fixing broken bodies and augmented limbs. He'd seen military-grade enhancements, illegal neural interfaces, and black market cybernetics that would make a corpo executive weep with envy. But what he saw beneath her clothing made him take an involuntary step backward. Her shoulder joint was a masterwork of engineering, exposed where the synthetic skin had torn away. Crystalline matrices interwoven with organic tissue, neural pathways that pulsed with bioluminescent energy, and materials he couldn't even identify. This wasn't just expensive. This was art. This was technology that shouldn't exist outside of core world laboratories. "What happened?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Combat," she said simply. Marcus pulled on his magnification visor and leaned in. The damage was extensive, but clean, as if something had struck with such precision that it had severed connections without destroying the underlying architecture. He'd need to reroute 3 neural clusters and rebuild the stabilization matrix from scratch. "This is going to take hours," he said, "and I'll need to use supplies I usually reserve for emergency cases. Price is irrelevant." He named a figure that would cover his rent for 6 months. She didn't blink. Marcus went to work. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, guided by instinct and decades of experience. He'd learned his trade on Earth before it became too expensive to live there, before he drifted out to the rim stations where people like him could still make a living. His tools were old but precise, and he knew how to coax broken things back to life. The woman didn't speak as he worked. She sat perfectly still, her breathing so controlled he sometimes forgot she was there. Most people fidgeted or made small talk or asked nervous questions. She simply existed, waiting. As he reconnected the neural pathways, Marcus found himself talking to fill the silence. "You military?" he asked. "I was. Core worlds or colonies?" "Neither. Both." She paused. "Does it matter?" "Not really. Just making conversation." He rerouted a cluster of synthetic nerves, watching the bioluminescence flicker back to life. "I don't usually see hardware this advanced. Even the fleet admirals who come through here have cheaper implants. I had access to better resources." Marcus chuckled. "Must have been some operation you were part of." She said nothing. He worked in silence for another hour, rebuilding the stabilization matrix layer by layer. His back ached and his eyes burned behind the magnification visor, but he pushed through. There was something almost meditative about this kind of work, the careful precision required to make broken things whole again. "You're very skilled," the woman said suddenly. Marcus shrugged. "I'm adequate. If I were truly skilled, I'd be working in a core world hospital, not a rim station repair shop." Skill is not determined by location. It is determined by result. That's a nice philosophy. He finished the last connection and sat back, rolling his shoulders. But results don't pay for shipping costs when supplies have to come from 3 systems away. He activated the shoulder joint, watching as the matrices synchronized and the neural pathways lit up in sequence. The synthetic skin would need to regenerate on its own, but the underlying structure was solid. Better than solid. It was perfect. "Try moving it," he said. She raised her arm slowly, testing the range of motion. Her fingers flexed, her elbow bent, her shoulder rotated through its full arc. For the first time since she'd entered his shop, something like surprise crossed her face. "The pain is gone," she said. "I rerouted the damaged nerve clusters. They were sending false signals to your brain. Should be better now." She stood and rolled her shoulder again, this time with more confidence. Marcus couldn't help but notice how deadly she looked, how every movement suggested lethal capability. He wondered what kind of combat had damaged her implant. He decided he didn't want to know. "What do I owe you?" she asked. He told her again. She transferred twice that amount. "The extra is for your discretion," she said. "You never saw me." Marcus nodded. He'd heard that line before. Never saw who? The corner of her mouth twitched. It might have been a smile. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You could have charged me 10 times your price. Your work is worth far more than you believe." "Maybe, but I prefer to sleep at night. An admirable trait." She pulled her hood up. "Rare in this galaxy." Then she was gone, disappearing into the crowd of the station's lower market levels. Marcus cleaned his tools and closed his shop for the night. It had been a long day, and that last job had drained him more than he wanted to admit. He thought about the woman as he ate a meal of reconstituted protein and stale bread. Thought about her unusual implants, her controlled movements, her careful words. He figured he'd never see her again. That was how it worked on RIM stations. People came, got fixed, and disappeared back into the black. He was wrong. 3 days later, Marcus woke to find his shop surrounded by ships. Not trade vessels or civilian transports. Warships, massive dreadnoughts that made Station Theta 9 look like a child's toy. They hung in space like sleeping predators, their weapons arrays dark but clearly visible. The station's communication systems lit up with a priority broadcast. Marcus watched on his crackling view screen as every display on Theta 9 showed the same image. The woman from his shop. She stood on the bridge of what had to be the flagship, her repaired shoulder visible beneath fitted armor. But she wasn't alone. Behind her stood ranks of soldiers in gleaming battle gear, and around her, holographic displays showed star systems and fleet positions that made Marcus's blood run cold. "People of Station Theta 9, she said, her voice carrying that same strange accent. "I am Empress Valeria Cade, Supreme Commander of the Outer Reach Coalition. For 10 years, your station has existed in the buffer zone between our territory and the core systems. That ends today." Marcus felt his stomach drop. The Outer Reach Coalition. He'd heard whispers about them, rumors of a military force that had been conquering systems in the deep black, expanding an empire, while the core worlds ignored what happened beyond their borders. And their leader, the Empress, was said to be unstoppable, brilliant, ruthless, the woman he'd fixed in his repair shop. "However," Valeria continued, "I have seen compassion here. I have witnessed skill offered without exploitation, honesty in a place of deception. For that reason, Station Theta 9 will be granted autonomous status within Coalition space. You will be protected, not conquered. Trade routes will open, security will improve, and your people will prosper." The screen shifted to show Marcus's shop. His own face stared back at him from security footage, his hands working on Valeria's shoulder. "This man repaired what my best medical teams could not. He asked for fair payment and expected nothing more. Let his example guide this station's future." The broadcast ended. Marcus sat in stunned silence as his communicator exploded with messages. Station officials wanted to meet him. News services wanted interviews. People he'd never spoken to suddenly claimed to be his friends. He ignored them all and opened his shop. An hour later, a coalition officer arrived with a data chip. "Compliments of the Empress," the officer said. "She wanted you to have this." Marcus plugged the chip into his terminal. It contained enough credits to buy his own station, along with a message in Valeria's precise script. "You gave me back my strength when you owed me nothing. You asked no questions and showed no fear. In a galaxy that values neither honesty nor mercy, you demonstrated both. For that, you have earned something far more valuable than credits. You have earned the protection of the Coalition and the personal gratitude of its Empress. Should you ever need anything, you need only ask. But I suspect you will not. People like you rarely do." Marcus read the message 3 times, then deleted it as requested. He looked at his tiny shop, his old tools, his simple life. Everything had changed, yet nothing had changed. He was still just a repair technician on a rim station, fixing broken things for people who needed help. The difference was that now, he'd apparently fixed the right person. Outside, the warships began to depart, leaving behind a small defense fleet and trade vessels already queuing for docking clearance. Station Theta 9 would prosper. People would come seeking the station that had earned the Empress's favor, and Marcus would keep working, because that's what he did. He fee.